Hello Figgy Fiends and Collectors, this is me, Daniel East 1000, back again with another Star Wars The Black Series figure review. Today we're going to be continuing on my look at the Walmart exclusive wave of Black Series figures. If you haven't seen it already, I have taken a look at the two Mandalorians that are from this wave. If you want to give that a watch, link will be up there somewhere. In this video, however, we'll be taking a look at Ahsoka Tano and the 332nd Clone Trooper, or more affectionately named Ahsoka's Clone. Quite fitting to do these two together really, but first, as per usual, we'll be taking a look at the packaging and then the figures themselves. So this is the new style of packaging. Gone are the old days of having a pure black box with the stylized imagery. We now have spines with full body shots of the actual characters that you're purchasing, which I absolutely love. You've also now got colour coordination for each of the films or media that they appear in. So because these are from the Clone Wars, they have a yellowy orange colour scheme running on the bottom there. And the cool thing about the spines of these packaging is if you join them all together or put them in number order, they build up a picture, which is really quite lovely. I think that's quite intuitive of Hasbro. Also, rather than having rectangular packagings, they put a bit of an edge angle on that box. I don't know why they've done that, but it's kind of cool. It's something a little bit different. Of course, you've got where the figure sits, title of the media that they're from, as well as the character names at the bottom. On the other side, you've got Star Wars The Black Series. Not really much going on there. And on the back, you've got a bio on the characters, which I will include in the video description below. Also got that nice artwork there as well. And like I said in my previous video, naturally because Hasbro have redone the packaging, that follows with a restart on the numbering system. This time it's a little bit more confusing just because the numbering system goes adjacent to the film that you're buying these characters from. As always though, something that is fairly familiar is that lovely Leo garb at the bottom there, of which nobody really cares about, but it's just there. Again, don't choke on your figures, kids. So anyway, that's the packaging pretty much out of the way and done with. Let's take a look at the figures themselves, of which follow suit in this wave of Hasbro repurposing, retooling and repainting certain sculpts from other figures for this wave. So, for example, Ahsoka basically reuses parts from the Rebels Ahsoka, which we got a couple of years back. This is the first release of her because they did update her more recently with the new face tech technology. So this figure basically uses parts from this one, but they have tweaked it, whereas the 332nd Clone Trooper, they have reused the body from the recently released Kamino Clone Trooper. Most of my thoughts on this figure pretty much applies with this one, which I haven't actually reviewed yet. So effectively take this review and implement it for that one because I won't really be covering that much basis with this guy. Personally, I have to say straight off the bat, these represent the best and the worst figures in this wave. The Mandalorians are like the happy middle ground that are sandwiched in between these two, and we'll go into which one I think's the best and which one I think is the worst out of these two. Starting off, we'll take a look at Ahsoka, of whom has become a big fan favourite. Ahsoka is certainly a character that I, to begin with, did have a bit of a hate relationship with. When we first got introduced to her, I thought, oh god. But then as the series and media that we've gotten about her have progressed, I've really come to love the character and appreciate her, and she does serve the story of Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side incredibly well at this point, quite seamlessly to be honest. But if we have a look at this figure, she is absolutely stunning. I love the amount of work they've put into it. I know it's effectively the same figure as the Ahsoka that we received from Rebels, but they have done a few tweaks to it. Personally, I thought this was going to be the weakest figure in the set. I wasn't overly fussed about getting it. I did say that in my sort of haul video. Surprisingly to me, this absolutely 100% the sleeper figure of this wave, and we'll get into the reason why I think that. So first and foremost, if we take a look at that head sculpt, I know a lot of people have complained about it, saying that it looks very animated, very stylised, akin to the Clone Wars. But to me, I think this fits in perfectly well with all your other live action figures. Although admittedly, compared to the Rebels Ahsoka, it does look a bit more moon-facey, which is fairly akin to how Ahsoka looks in that show. The costume is very, very nice. The lower half of the body is pretty much recycled, but they have redone the top half of the body just because there is some additional articulation that the Rebels Ahsoka doesn't feature. But as you can see on that costume, you can see a lot of Mandalorian influences there just in the shape on some of that trim, you know, part of the skirt here, which is lovely. If we go around, at first glance it is a relatively basic figure, but I do believe it is a big improvement on the actual Rebels one, and I actually do prefer this one quite a bit more, just because I don't seemingly have that many problems standing her. I have tons of problems standing the Rebels Ahsoka. This one works really, really well, and I'm not sure why that is. Potentially it's because it's not as top heavy, at least on the head, because the Leku aren't as long. In terms of articulation, she has a ball jointed head on a ball hinge, so she can have a great amount of movement there. She has butterfly joints, which are a little bit tight, ball jointed shoulders, ball jointed elbows, ball jointed wrists, ball jointed torso, ball jointed hips, swivel at the top of the thigh, double hinged knees, and ball jointed ankles with rocker joints. So you can get this figure in some really, really dynamic poses. In terms of accessories, she comes with her two lightsabers. You've got the shorter Shoto lightsaber, if I'm correct in saying that, and then the longer one. Of course, you can peg those two lightsabers because they do have the peg slots that fit in to the side of her skirt there, which is quite nice. But I think most people will have her wielding them. Of course, you can take out the lightsaber beams, which is quite nice. Yeah, overall, just a really, really lovely figure, and absolutely is one that really took me by surprise. Well, that's Ahsoka for you. Let's take a look at her Clone Trooper loyalist. Now, I'm not really going to spend too much time talking about this because I'm not a big clone nut, as I have said in numerous videos on this channel, but this is one figure that I actually was really excited about, and that's pretty weird for me, purely because I remember Dave Filoni talking about the Siege of Mandalore arc. This was at a Comic-Con or celebration quite a few years ago, and to now actually see him be able to fulfill that series, and to actually see these clone troopers that he spoke about actually have screen time and actually be made in figure form, was a really exciting concept for me. And actually this was one figure that I really did want. Admittedly, in my opinion, and you can completely disagree with me if you wish, actually having it in hand, it's a tiny bit disappointing. It's not bad by any stretch or means. I don't know, there's something about it, and I think it's just because it's this clone sculpt. Something feels off about it. Not so much the paint apps or anything, the paint apps to me are just, they're alright. It's just this clone sculpt, and it's the same with the Camino Clone Trooper. I can't put my finger on it. If we take a look at this guy, I love the paint apps on the helmet, although, and this is something that these clones are seemingly going to suffer from because of Hasbro's ineptness. If we just have a look at the Camino Clone Trooper as well, the helmets are a little bit wonky because in Hasbro's divine wisdom, they've put like a head sculpt in there and then they've glued the helmet on top. And pretty much 9.9 times out of 10 they've been glued on wonky, so they don't quite sit straight on the actual head that they've glued it on, and they just look a little bit wonky on the body. It's hard to sort of fix that. I know some people have, but come on, Hasbro. You didn't, I don't know what their idea was in doing that. It's definitely something they've got in the pipeline of maybe including, you know, clone trooper heads or something like removable helmets. I don't know, but why they had to glue them is pretty beyond me. Naturally, because this is a new clone trooper sculpt, they've included new articulation for better and in some ways worse. So this guy has a ball jointed head and a ball jointed neck, so you can get some pretty good motion out of that. He has butterfly joints, of which I love, and I'm really glad they've included that. Ball jointed shoulders, ball jointed elbows. Now originally there were double jointed elbows, and I wish they'd kept that, but they've scrapped it, so every time you move them you've got that armour piece there. These feel very rubbery, and part of me feels like it's going to break, especially on these joins or seams here, because these are actually free, so that pushes up against that. You can get a nice amount of movement there, but that nice amount of movement, you can see sort of how that joint is cutting into that very fragile piece of plastic. I try not to overstretch that, to be honest. But anyways, he's got ball jointed elbows, ball jointed wrists, ball jointed torso, ball jointed hips, swivel at the top of the thigh, the lovely ball jointed knees that Hasbro have decided to include, and again you've got that rubbery bit of plastic there that wraps around that for the armour plating or knee pads. If you overdo it, you're going to cut into that potentially, just potentially. Ball jointed ankles with rocker joints. So you can get this guy into some really, really dynamic and cool poses. In terms of paint application, on that helmet, they've kind of given it a bit of a scratchy look just to make out as if the clone has painted it on, so it's a little bit rough and ready rather than completely clean. And that actually falls with the episode or episodes that these clones appear in, just because these are effectively borrowed 501st troopers that Ahsoka uses, and the clone troopers, to show their sort of support to her, paint their helmets in her markings. I do kind of like how it isn't perfect. They have sort of done a bit of a scratchy job on it. As for the armour, you've got a bit of paint chipping on that as well. You've got the blue 501st markings, which is nice, running down the leg as well. But yeah, overall, in terms of paint application, it is, or feels at least, a little bit basic, but there's nothing wrong with that. It would have been nice to see some weathering on this clone, but it is what it is. In terms of accessories, he comes with his long blaster rifle, and you also have a shorter blaster rifle as well. He comes with 2 accessories, which is pretty nice. And if I just give you one last look at this guy, because he isn't bad at all. Just for my money, he's probably for some reason the weakest. I can't fully tell you why, other than the points I've given you. But that by no means means it's a bad figure. It's just something feels a tiny bit off with it. But nonetheless, I am really pleased with the Ahsoka, just because that was a big sleeper figure for me. So that's my thoughts on these two guys. I think Ahsoka is definitely the best figure in the wave, surprisingly. And the Clone Trooper is, unfortunately, one of the weaker ones. I just think it's incredibly basic. And the Mandalorians would just fit in the middle there if I actually had them to hand to put them in the middle, and if I actually had the hands to hold them as well. But nonetheless, what do you guys think of not only these two figures, but how the wave works as a whole? I think it's a damn solid wave. It just makes me wish they included another 2 characters just to round it off a little bit more. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And this is me, Daniel East 1000, signing out, and thank you very much for watching.